It is a super rich panel, but it is also a super original panel in the sense what Ephraim said before, that it represents views that are highly unpopular, highly uncommon, and really they are out of the public sphere. And I will take advantage of your first question about the information bubbles. They all live in information bubbles. In a certain way, Zionism is a huge information bubble because not just Zionism, nationalism in general, dominant ethno-nationalism, it's a huge information bubbles that create a certain consciousness which is in many ways ahistorical. You see, you go, I spent lots of time in Israel. You talk with people, they have a certain sense of what is history, and then you check history and you see that there is a big difference between the perception of history, which is super central to the justification of everything, and actual history and what it means. So, and meaning this is even before the internet, social media, etc., but if anything, it has been exacerbated in the last few years. And I'm saying that because, for example, I just spent a week in Israel, and the word kibush was not mentioned even once, occupation, sorry, thank you, was not mentioned even once in any of my family discussions. And it's not that they didn't mention politics, it was there. It was not, they have been watching TV all the time, in the news, in everything. And meaning, not occupation, not apartheid, not segregation, not different rights. It's just not there. And so in that sense, going back to what I was trying to say before, this is super original in the sense that by having this discussion, I'm so happy to be here, it challenges the general narrative of the national narrative, but also, as you said, the perception. And it's not that, as Chico said, that the whole Brit Shalom tradition disappeared. Actually, the whole point. You were there when we tried to found Brit Shivion? I think that you were one of the people. Actually, the whole notion of Brit Shivion has been an attempt to recuperate that kind of tradition of binational, what was then talk, and it was, I think it was a great contribution to the Israeli talk because, for example, Medinat Ol Ezrachea, meaning a state for its own citizen, it came from there. It was not part of the public debate up to there, and it was adopted by also for some Zionist people like Shulamit Alonim, Meretz, etc. So it is, but it is marginal. It's not in the media. It's not anywhere. Now I want to leave people time for questions for other people, so I don't want to take too much, but I will leave one question for everyone. We had the law of the nation state, which has been discussed pretty much by everyone, or no, not very much by everyone. It was discussed by those of you discussing the aspect inside sovereign Israel and in relation to the Palestinians, citizens of Israel, we think, but it's much less relevant to Palestinians in occupied territories, and not to mention the Palestinians in the diaspora, which is not an... Oh, it is relevant, but it's not relevant to the daily... It is relevant, but not to the daily life when in a certain sense, citizens in Palestine, meaning not citizens, they are not citizens at all, so it's not an issue. But let me finish. And then last week something incredible happened, which is the recognition by the Trump administration of the settlements as legal. So two things happened there. And my question is, isn't it a good thing? A good thing in the Marxian tradition. When Marx discusses the revolutionary function of the bourgeoisie, he said, well, the bourgeoisie revolutionized the relations of production by doing this and this and this, and it developed, and it created, and it developed industry, etc. But, and let me finish the idea, it also showed in naked terms the actual reality of the relations of production. And what I'm saying is that actually Israel has always been the nation state of the Jewish people, and now it's there. They cannot hide anymore by saying it's Jewish and democratic. No, it's not. It's Jewish, and perhaps democratic afterwards. And the same with the declaration of the settlements. It has been always recognized and supported by the United States, and now it's there, meaning they don't have to hide it. They are not. If anything, there was a dissonance before when they declared one thing, but the reality was other. So in that sense, I mean, it's a good thing. I don't mean that it's a good thing. It's a good thing by
defining the situation.
By putting truth. It's good for presenting truth. And French is important, as Aristotle said, but truth is even more important.
This is for everyone or anyone in the panel, or in fact anyone who spent time in Israel recently, because I haven't. So my question is it possible for one living in Israel, be they a Jew, Arab, or anything else, is it possible for them to live in what's called today information bubbles? And if so, how do these manifest themselves through media awareness and these sorts of things?
First of all, thank you everyone for the very interesting presentations. And I wanted to ask you, Ephraim, I'm a little bit curious about the numbers, the demography that you showed, and I'm really curious about the count, because that's not the numbers that I'm familiar with, the head count, that is. And my main question is for you, Amne. I was wondering, how do you see, I'm interested in hearing your view on Assad's remark about the difference, if there is going to be any NTA arrangement within the borders of Israel, about how do you accommodate the differences, and how do you view the difference that Assad hinted at in regard to the disparity between Palestinians who are Israeli citizens and Palestinians who are not. What's your view about that? And just maybe a brief comment to the speakers that did the historical survey. I think that something very important was left out, and that is that the term Palestinians was not used by the Palestinians themselves prior to the late 1930s, I believe. Before that, they themselves viewed themselves as Arabs and part of a larger Arab community, and that's why they had problems of defining their opposition to the Zionist movement, which on that sphere was much more, how shall I put it, focused. So I think that's also something that needs to be taken into consideration.
I have a general question about the panel, and two problems I think are important and are not discussed. Demography problem in Israel-Palestinian conflict and solution, and which is the relation between demography and the non-territorial autonomy. The second is how can we define nation, religious and cultural identity in the context. If you delete national identity, how can we define a cultural participation, autonomy in this context? Who is a Jew as a cultural Jews or Palestinian cultural Palestinian? How can we define these different terms? Thank you.
I was especially curious after the last talk. At the very, very end, you talked a little bit about the Arabic Jewish heritage, and I'm wondering. You mentioned as well that you're a teacher. Whether there's any way, whether in the public cultural sphere or in the curriculum, where kind of the literary Arab Jewish heritage or a cultural heritage in general is more present or part of the conversation for anyone, whether within kind of Jewish Israeli society or any aspect of Palestinian society, and if that's something that's growing or was present or anything along those lines. I'd be quite curious to know.
I have one comment and one general question. So my comment goes to Maital. I think it's absolutely non-astonishing. I mean, that's, if you support Arabic, then you create solidarity, and that's not what you want. I mean, this, if you look at, I mean, I'm a historian working on the Habsburg Empire. I mean, creating universities in other languages is enhancing national movement. So if you want to prevent Arabic to become a strong language and Palestinians to empower themselves, you have to prevent universities and teaching. I mean, that's in the very logic of a national state, is not to support minority languages. So it's because you said it's kind of you would wish that it would be different, but it's part of the system. I know, but I had the impression that there was a question mark why they don't do it, but I think the logic is so obvious. I agree. And the second, that's a general question, is about the duality of a non-territorial solution for Israel. Do we really only have two groups? So is there only the Palestinian side and the Israeli side, Israeli Jewish side? I mean, very often there is a Christian community, and I'm not speaking so much about the Palestinian Christian community, but of the Jewish, or not the Jewish. So there's immigrants who came with Jewish, especially former Soviet. So would it be interesting to, or could it even be helpful to have a third part or a fourth part with the Druze community in order to reduce this dual system? Dual systems are always very confrontational.
Of course, that there are more divisions and more groups. We also heard yesterday a lecture by Erela. On the ground, there is a multiplicity of all kinds of groups, right? My argument is that I'm going to make it a little bit vivid. I suspect that in Belgrade, you have a group of people that support the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. He's a very important Indian philosopher. The only thing is that this group exists here, but it doesn't affect probably the politics of Belgrade, you understand? So they are there, but politically speaking, they're not consequential, you understand? And the reason that I mention only the two groups, or the Palestinian, are because, like it or hate it, from a scholarly perspective, this is the contradiction that accounts for 90% of everything that is going on there. It's not that the other people are not important, Druze or Armenian so this is why I speak about that, because and this is, but of course that there are cultural groups and other demands. About the label of the Palestinians, it's a tricky question. First of all, the mandate is called the Palestine Mandate. That's the name of the mandate written by the League of Nations. So at least in English, if you take the money of the money or the coins that were used during the mandate, it's written Palestine on the money from 1920, and it's written in Hebrew, in Arabic, and in English. Even in Hebrew, it's written Palestina. So, but you're correct that collectivities are constructed, and that the sense of Palestinianism and Arabism is a social construct. The same also is the case of Israelis. There was no Israel before 1937. The Hebrew-speaking collectivity of Israeli Jews is also something new. It didn't exist before. That's a success of Zionism in terms of its ability to reinvent Hebrew. And this is why also unlike the Basque or unlike the Copts or under other national movements that are trying to revive a language, Zionism is very successful, and the revival of Hebrew is so important for the success of the national project. And the national project, and this is something that I want to tell my colleague here, I think that you are trying to square the circle, because the logic of nationalism, as long as Zionism is in its form, you cannot escape the contradiction that it is a separatist movement that is going to be hostile, by definition, to Arabism, Arab, and non-Jews. And you are trying to, in a way, to create a situation you're really eager for a liberal form of Zionism. That's what you are trying to do. Let's try to somehow enhance the linguistic linkages between the people, but the problem is that even if you are going to be successful in your own terms, right, the system rests on superiority. And this is it. You cannot, it's a system that rests on asymmetry, right? So the Palestinians are not going to satisfy the demands of the minority community if the minority community is not treated as humanly equal. There is no escape out of that. You understand what I'm saying? So this is why the difference between Zionism and binationalism, right away, the difference is that binational state is a state that is equally owned by both groups. Equally. That's the issue here. And a Jewish state or a Muslim state is a state that is owned only by one group. So this is what we say here, and you are correct that we are a minority. The only way out, right, of the situation begins by, also in 1953, when Nelson Mandela came up with the document of the ANC in 1955, right, nobody thought that he is going to be successful. But he put a document to the white minority in South Africa and said, this is your way out. Well, he gave it, there is a way out. We are not going to kick you out of the territory. We are going to leave you here, but there is going to be equality in South Africa, and apartheid is going to be removed. There's no, so this is what we are trying to say.
Speaking about your comment on nationality law and if it concerns the Palestinians in the occupied territories of 1967 or not, I think it affects all Palestinians and the Palestinian cause at all, in a whole sense. There are two items that I want to highlight. The issue of that it states that self-determination is only for Jews in Eretz Israel. And second, that it enhances settlement expansion in the occupied territories. And with this, it declares that there is no right to self-determination to the Palestinians on any part of Palestine. And at the same time, they want to increase control and enhance control through settlements. And of course, settlements has many issues around it to enhance its existence. Your question about what if we speak about non-territorial autonomy and the ideas that proposed by Dr. Assad, and speaking about the borders of Israel, I'm going to say the borders of Palestine. And speaking about disparity between Palestinians, citizens of Israel, and Palestinians, citizens, not citizens, but stateless Palestinians living in the occupied territories, I will say that any vision should address the issue of disparity between all Israeli Jews, Palestinians, and all Palestinians.
Among the Jews and among the Palestinians.
Yeah, all. It's not about how we want to stress the divide between Palestinians. It's very much about we try to address disparity among all across nationalities and religions. And speaking about Christian Palestinians, I don't want to go through religious divisions. I'm saying Christians are Palestinians, Muslims are Palestinians. So it's not we're not here in a fight on religious terms. And I'm Palestinian from Jerusalem, and I live with I and my Christian sisters and brothers. We live together in good harmony. So the last comment I want to address is the issue of Palestinian nationalism and how it evolved and when it evolved. And you mentioned the 30s, then when Palestinians started to speak about we Palestinians. Put it in context, related to history. All of this area has been under Ottoman rule for 400 years, and all of them were subjects to the Ottomans, whether you speak about Syrians or Lebanese or Iraqis. All these nationalities were developed over the years as a result of fragmentation that has to do with the colonial project in the area. So and the Palestinians were, as their brother, the Arab brothers, they related themselves as Arabs. The Arab revolt was against the Turks. It's not, and the Ottoman rule, and like any others, the Palestinians participated in it. But when the Zionist project started to be established in Palestine, the Palestinians are the ones who led their struggle against the Zionist project, and they are, because they belong to the land, they have the same traditions, the same history, and they said that this is our struggle. They didn't go to Iraq to fight; they fought in Palestine because this is their homeland. Thank you.
Okay, I will address quickly only Boris's question, which relates to Shiko's comment. So it's true that the logic of the nation state and of the Zionism is hierarchical. The idea is that the Jews are here and the Arabs or Palestinians are here. That's true. But you and where is Boris? And you and other people here, and that's fine. I'm not criticizing it, but you're trying to suggest like a very high ideas about how to solve basically all the problems in the Israeli-Palestine conflict. I'm not doing that. I'm basically asking, why can't we do this minimal step, this soft? It's a soft collective rights. Nothing will happen if Jews will speak Arabic fluently. I mean, I've never understood why it is such a conflict. Where is the conflict? If we can do like easy things that are acceptable, why not doing them? Okay, of course I don't accept the Zionist idea of hierarchy between Jews and Arabs. I wish Israel was a binational state, but my argument is not talking to people like us who want Israel to be a binational state. I'm trying to talk to people who are right-wing in my family also. I mean, let's admit it, and that think that Arabic should be excluded from the Israeli public sphere.
Thank you. Just 2 points. I know that we are run of time. Actually, one, I think that a lot will happen if Jews will know Arabic. I mean, I think that it's very important thing. Part of the problem that many Jews in Israel that are captured by Netanyahu, they think that Arabs all time sit down in their home and they think how to throw out the Jews from Palestine. So, and this is the reality. So it is very important they learn Arabic and they know that we are normal people. We think about our boys and kids and not only about how to throw up the Jews from Palestine. And this is very important. Secondly, I think the Boaz, there is something that you mixed. I mean, when we speak about nationalism, it's a new modern idea, and there was no Jews in the modern national meaning before Herzl. So Jews are also a new phenomena, and it was a failure until the Nazi came to power. In 1929, majority of Jews in Palestine were anti-Zionists, were non-Zionists. So the project of being a Jewish in the political meaning of being Zionist, supporting the concept of nationalism is much newer than the Palestinianism. Palestinianism came to power after British came to Palestine in 1919, and then Palestinians start claiming after the collapse of the Faisal kingdom in Damascus, claim their own self-determination. Jews really start thinking about self-determination only following the genocide and when the whole problem. I don't mean by the elites. The elites start thinking about this as a political project by Herzl and Hadam. That's true. In the late 19th century. And this is a new idea like Palestinianism, because nationalism came out in a context. Think about Yugoslavia. What we have here, it is the context of what happened after the collapse of the Soviet Union and the communist bloc. So the meaning of being what is the local Serbian, it is now it is totally different than being a Serbian under Tito, because this is a concept of the context who fill up the content of nationalism. So I prefer not going back and speaking about who came before and who started this. Let's think about the reality today. The reality today in Palestine, Israel, there is nowhere for two-state solution. There is a confrontation, and it will continue all the time that we didn't really switch our mind and think about having the ideas of non-territorial autonomies as part of the solution of the conflict. Whatever identity, just think about the principle that accept the right of different communities to have their own power over their life and to share the land of Palestine between two of these. Otherwise, we'll continue in conflict, and this is not good. It is very bad for us. I think that it might be good for you, but this will be just temporary because things will turn down in the future. Thank you.
There is absolutely no doubt whatsoever from numbers that are produced by the official Israeli Statistic Office that the Israeli Jews are a minority in historical Palestine today, since 2018. The numbers are there, and there have been articles, they have demographers like Professor Tal and a number of others in an organization called Safuf Lahem Shilchu Australia, that they are that the vast majority of that first of all it is an overcrowded country. The number of people you will not be able to deny that when you drive across the roads are crowded. The numbers of people that are there are far beyond the possibility of that land to sustain those people. The process is not so much of a Palestinian rebellion, but it's conditions that will bring about the self-destruction of the Israeli state because of the impossibility to sustain that particular society. If you can read also Yediot Achronot, there are a number of articles. There's a man called Yaron London who wrote an article who said that Israel is the most crowded country in the world. This is a little bit of an exaggeration, but it is not beyond the argument. The second thing is about Arab Jews. This is an argument that has been read fortunately or unfortunately, the majority of us who are here are descendants of Arab Jews. And we are, many of us, and I include myself there, are proud of that heritage. And there have been a number of works and books. Professor Yehuda Senhaf, for example, wrote in a book which is called The Arab Jews. And this is not something that is of any doubt. The other thing is, it is a mistake to understand the occupied territories of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, perhaps a bit differently, the Gaza Strip, but the West Bank, as separate from the State of Israel. The State of Israel is no longer the 1967 war. The majority, I would, with all due respect, all of you except me were not born when the time that the State of Israel was existing in the 1967 the State of Israel, there will be no withdrawal from the occupied territories because this will create an enormous civil war. The nationalist right will fight, the fundamentalist, the Gush Emunim type of this people and descendants will fight with their weapons that they have, the massive amount of weapons they have against any government, Israeli or Palestinian, that will try to remove them. So if we want a solution, the solution has to be one of a binational state. The State of Israel cannot sustain itself in the present form. And the other thing is, you said about, for your information, there was a newspaper called Philistine that was created in Haifa in 1918. And that newspaper was also used by a number of people, like, for example, Hans Kohn, who was considered to be one of the founding members of the academic study of nationalism, who wrote articles in that newspaper in Arabic explaining to the Palestinians in the newspaper called Philistine that we are here not to destroy your country and not to occupy their country, but to live together.